Greg, Ilya, Mikola, go ahead and start the
Hello,
conversion.
everybody. All right. Um, so let's see. We've got a number of topics, and I know a little bit about some of them. So we're going to go on an adventure today. Um, it looks like the first thing on the agenda is the dashboard, as with the other sessions. So are they here and want to talk about that? See Jeff.
Yeah.
There's Ernesto. Hi, Ernesto.
Here I am. Today I'm going to run the daily ration of dashboard demo. So actually, well, I think RBD is probably the most mature component in the dashboard. So it currently has the three major pillars: the RBD images, the RBD mirroring, and also the iSCSI. So I will start showing RBD mirroring. iSCSI is hard to demo. I don't have the infra to do that, so I will focus on RBD and RBD mirroring. So please let me know if you see my screen when I start sharing it. Okay. Right. Do you see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Do you need to me to increase the size, or is that okay?
A little bigger would probably help.
Okay, we'll do that then. Okay, I'm not sure how well the dashboard will behave with these changes in size, but well, let's try. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the dashboard, but basically this is the RBD section. We decided to go with the blog name instead of the RBD because it's more generic and less Ceph-ish. So, well, it was a popular vote in this case rather than the RBD naming. So in this case, we can see here the images namespaces. We also have the trash. So basically, you can create an RBD image like RBD. You can also see like you have multiple RBD pools, and also you have select a separate data pool. In this case, I don't have any other pool, so I don't have the choice to do that. So then you have all the different options. If we want to use mirroring, I think I have to enable journaling, so I will do that right now. And we also have the stripping options and the QoS options. Alfonso already shared because the QoS are available at different layers at pool level, also on RBD image level. I think it's also at snapshot level also. So there are multiple places where these settings can be configured. So in this case, I can create the image. So there it is. We have all the metadata of the image and also the configuration settings. These are the QoS ones. And the performance, which is Grafana, but currently I don't have this enabled. So if you have interest on have a look at that, I can demo that in a different meeting. So then we have the options for creating snapshots, and well, provides a predefined snapshot name. So that's it. Then we can have the specific operations for that, so we can protect that. And then when it's protected, we can clone it, etc. So that's it. We have namespace support as well. I remember Jason mentioned that it wasn't much demanded, this kind of support. It's there just for compatibility. And also, I think we support both V1 and V2 images. V1 legacy support was recently added. All right, it's there. So we found it was necessary for migrating. Some users had V1 images and they were facing issues when migrating to V2. So it's there. So that's mostly it about the image section. If we go to the RBD mirroring, I hope this is working. I just set up the, let me check if it's, I think it's not working. Now it should. Okay. So there is this way for configuring the RBD mirroring with the Bootstrap. So we can create the Bootstrap basically and use that for importing that in the other cluster. I think this is a really nice improvement, and probably it's the way that we should do also for other. I'm not sure if Ceph mirroring is also supporting this or going to support this, but I think it's a very nice way of doing that. So now you don't see my other page with the other dashboard, but well, I'm basically pasting that token. Let me complete that. So that should be there. Well, okay, I have to enable this before. I'm using the pool because I don't have the images enabled yet. So I guess that should start working now. Well, that's basically it. So once, well, we have here the image. I don't have any image yet syncing. That again. And I think now it should be working. Well, there are some connectivity issues between those. I'm running Docker Compose, so I have in this two Ceph clusters in Docker images. So basically, this will be the look and feel of the RBD mirroring section. So yeah, I'm not sure what else is here. We can configure. We can also check. In this case, we don't have any images syncing. There is no info here, and models in here. So that could be mostly it about the demo. It's been very short. And then there's the iSCSI section. In this case, well, you have to set up an RGW, Ceph iSCSI gateway and all this stuff. I think CephADM supports that, right? So it could be really easy to do that with CephADM. And I guess that's mostly it. So I remember JSON opened a few tracker issues for dashboard to expose RBD mirroring for snapshots and some other things. Is there anything else that we should start, taking care of for RBD? Anything that you find here missing?
That is what I'm familiar with, is the snapshot mirroring. It's kind of the big feature that's gone in for Pacific that I'm aware of. Ilya, do you know anything else?
I was curious to see the performance tab. Yeah, because
that's the Grafana one. I can do that. I don't want to take too much time.
No need to do it here. Just that I anticipate some improvements on that front, simply because we'll be focusing on exposing performance metrics for snapshot-based mirroring in Quincy, and as part of that, we should, I should probably take a look at the look and feel of the general performance metrics, performance tab, and to sort of make them look the same for the mirrored images as well. But that's in the future, so no need to bother now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the performance is basically the Grafana dashboards, and we're also using the information from the RBD stats. So if you have that enabled, it will show it here in the overall performance and also in the per RBD image. So here it will also show the specific stats for this RBD image. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I think we're done with the demo. Thank you very much for your feedback.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so the next topic on the agenda is NVMe over Fabric status and next steps, which I think Sage put on here.
Oh, yeah. not expecting to present it though.
Yeah.
My limited understanding here is that we have like a skeleton repository or a something that mirrors the Ceph SCSI. There's like a REST API endpoint for configuring them.
Yes, that's about what exists. I think Jason put it in, and I would have liked to look at it a little more before now or next week, but I haven't because I've been on vacation. So for the rest of you, if you haven't heard, we're working on, or there's a Ceph NVMe over Fabric working group, which meets on, I don't remember which day, on Tuesdays in the morning Pacific time. It's on the community calendar that we have published. And at the moment, the early thing is just sort of we're setting up a gateway that reads librd on one side and speaks NVMe over Fabric out the other side, modeled on the iSCSI one a bit. Let's see. There's the repository, or the branch that Jason put together. So that's a thing that we'll be seeing some work over the next several months, probably.
Yeah, someone from IBM was supposed also to join. So also we have contributing from Intel and IBM, but also looking at the NVMe Fabric, and we plan to use SPDK, so we'll need some enhancements to the SPDK implementation, and probably librd as a scale issue that we need to fix and maybe improve it in general.
Yep.
And we also need a discovery service. Because NVMe Fabric has a discovery part of protocol discovery, so you can actually find out which targets you have in the cluster and which volumes namespace it has or subsystems. So that's something we'll need to implement as well.
Yep. So next topic on the agenda is RBD mirroring monitoring. I think this is Ilya's. Maybe?
Yeah, I guess I can talk about it briefly. So the goal for Quincy is to improve, or basically establish some sort of unified way for pushing metrics for our various mirroring solutions, and the primary targets are RBD snapshot-based mirroring and CephFS, also snapshot-based mirroring. These can probably be unified to a fairly large degree, and the set of high-level metrics as far as this thing is being mirrored, this thing is up to date or this much behind, how many snapshots are in flight, how many are still need to be synced. Some kind of general bandwidth estimation. So things like that probably apply to both RBD and CephFS, so we can come up with a hopefully unified both metadata and data scheme and present that as a set of Prometheus metrics that can then be scraped by the dashboard, whether it's Ceph dashboard or something on the Kubernetes side. The alert manager can also hook into this. So that's the goal. The stretch goal is to also incorporate RGW into this scheme. The RGW multi-site is obviously a very different beast, and to start with, it's multi-way. So sort of shoveling it into this unified scheme that we can come up fairly easily for RBD and CephFS. RGW would probably not fit into it, but we should at least try, and that's the overall direction that we're being, that basically people want on the Kubernetes side, because the log file and object PVs are supposed to look the same and kind of being mirrored the same way, at least again from the high-level point of view. But for RBD and serverless, it should be doable, and that's the goal for Pacific. Now, as far as this presents some challenges, particularly on the scalability side and on the manager side as well. Currently, what we have is a manager module which exposes Prometheus metrics that are being thrown at it through the OSD performance counters interface. So the Ceph performance counters get translated into Prometheus metrics and exposed through a single endpoint. And at the scale requirements that we're looking at, and also availability requirements that we're looking at, that is not going to work. We're already having issues with the manager basically being overloaded, and what once was a solution to solve the monitor overload issues, we now need to solve the manager overload issues. Basically, it's kind of a reincarnation of that. And what we're looking at is to have each mirroring daemon present its own Prometheus endpoint, and adapting all of the consumers, the dashboard, and the Kubernetes side of the house to scrape those multiple endpoints and collate them together, and have that happen on the client side. That as far as implementation, on the RBD side, we already collect the necessary metrics, or pretty much all of them. There might be a couple that would need to be added, but the basic stuff, such as, again, how many snapshots are implied, how many snapshots still need to be synced, things like that. That is already there, as well as some basic bandwidth estimation. So we can take the difference between the two snapshot counters and sort of gauge the bandwidth from that. So on the RBD side, what needs to be done is just needs to be exposed. On the serverless mirroring side, there are no metrics that I'm aware of. So a comparable set of metrics would need to be implemented in the mirroring daemon first, and then exposed. And I haven't looked at the RGW at all. As far as the exposure part, the high-level plan is to come up with some sort of convenience helper library, which could be linked to each of the daemons, and have a few methods that would send up the web server and present those metrics in the Prometheus format. One thing that we gain from this, apart from solving the scalability problem, is that the current gateway from Ceph performance counters to Prometheus performance counters is limited in the sense that we cannot expose, we don't have support for exposing histograms and those types of more complicated metrics. Is basically just the simplest kind, which is a metric in the counter. That's what we do. Once we move away from the performance counter bridge, we can have the raw data. We can actually expose those as well. And the goal is to handle that in that convenience library. The web server part is, I'm thinking we should probably do it with Beast, simply because there is a library out there, a fairly established C++ library for exposing Prometheus metrics, but it basically includes the CivetWeb web server as a submodule, and since we spent quite a long time, getting rid of it in Ceph, bringing it back is probably not a good idea. So the goal is to hopefully settle on Beast, but CivetWeb and the existing library is obviously an option too. I think that's about all I have to say. If there are any questions, please ask.
A quick question on the Prometheus endpoint part. Is that something that's going to be reusable across lots of different components?
Yes, that's the goal of the convenience library. So like I said, it's something that can be linked into the RBD mirroring daemon, into the CFFS mirroring daemon, and hopefully RGW if we manage to get something done on that side. Maybe not in Glincy, but in the future, again, the goal is to have a fairly minimal interface that would support all 4 types of Prometheus, types of whatever they're called, and be able to expose histograms and whatever else that we want to do in the future.
Yeah, earlier this week we also talked about trying to move the monitoring in general out of the manager and source that from all the sources directly to Prometheus itself. They don't have everything funneling through the manager module. Would this library be a good way to do that? Or good?
I'm sorry, I'm actually on PTO, so I wasn't in that discussion. But I imagine, yes, if we're going to do a library that would basically be a web server that takes whatever is thrown at it on one side and presents a Prometheus endpoint on the other side, this would obviously be a natural fit because we don't want to do it twice.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can discuss more about this later then. I imagine that we'll need to go through the existing module and figure out what kinds of metrics are there and where they need to be sourced from.
Yeah, currently it's like I said, it's very simple. It just takes the simplest kind of OSD performance counters and translates them to the simplest kind of Prometheus. Again, I'm going blank on what they're called, but there are 4 of them, and we support only 2, and it's like 1.5 to be precise. Yeah, so the goal is to support all 4 and have that happen in a single place that can be linked to whatever it is that wants to have an endpoint.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess my main question is, are we sure that the CFFS and RBD mirroring is similar enough that this will be convenient? For instance, there was a discussion, like RGW, I know you said it's different, but they were talking about like whether they wanted to prioritize hot or cold buckets for syncing. And I think RBD and CFFS are both just sending the oldest snapshot that they have whenever they finish sending one snapshot, but I'm not sure if there are other issues like that make just a translation from snapshot status more complicated to share.
Well, I think these are sort of 2 orthogonal problems. One is the library that presents an endpoint. That's obviously, I mean, we don't. There is not a degree of freedom there because the interface would have to mirror what Prometheus does, right?
Okay.
So yeah. It's a basic performance counter interface.
We want there, yeah.
Yeah, it's a basic performance counter interface, and you encode whatever you want to encode. right? So the library is obviously going to be reusable. There's no question about that. Whether or not and now onto the data and metadata scheme for these things. I think that the file system and block metrics, given that both are based on snapshots and the SFFS mirror daemon was the implementation was, from what I understand, it is basically based on the RBD implementation to some extent at least, and the high level idea is very similar. I mean, we take a snapshot and we either rsync it or push it, or rather in the RBD case, we're actually pulling them. But the set of counters, I imagine would be pretty much the same, and so a unified data scheme makes a lot of sense to me there. On the RGW side, again, with the buckets that can actually be mirrored, so it's basically a mesh as opposed to one-way street in the block and file cases. So yeah, doing something coherent there would probably be a challenge and may not make sense in the end. But that's, like I said, that's a stretch goal and probably not for Quincy.
I think that the most interesting metric would be how much we are logging. Yes.
Yes.
The question: is it possible to calculate for CFFS? But for RBD mirror, it's possible, and probably it's already.
Yeah, for RBD mirror, it's already there. It can be calculated. Again, there are no metrics for CFFS mirror that I'm aware of today. But without that metric, exposing any other metrics doesn't make much sense, because that's the most important one that will need to be there, and so we'll need to implement it, obviously. It should be possible, because again, we don't have the mirroring solution that does not know how far behind it is to some extent worthless, because you cannot tell whether you have a mirroring solution at that point or not.
Okay.
All right. There's no further questions about monitoring. Then, Mikkel, I think you're up next for volume groups on snap mirroring.
Actually, I don't know who created that document.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
All right, Arit, you're up.
Yeah, so basically, as we are snapshot-based mirroring, we would like volume groups like we have for snapshots. So we can take the snapshot for a group, we'll have a consistency group when we mirror it. Basically, that's it. I don't know if it's possible. I think it's possible, but is it a snapshot?
Yes, actually, there was some desynchronization here. Probably you're just not aware, because I'm actually working on this project.
Cool.
So I'm just added a link to the chat to my current PR, which is still work in progress, but basically it's already provide something like described here. It still needs much work, but it was reviewed by and discussed with Jason, and he was positive about it. I need to update it according to our discussion and add missing features. And the difference with what interface you provided in this document, that you have commands for creating mirror group, yes, removing mirror groups. Actually, we already have this conception of group implemented, and just they called consistency groups, and already used for creating consistency snapshots for group of images. So we just extending this functionality. So instead of adding mirror group, we enable or disable mirroring for already existing group. And when you add, so it then automatically enables mirroring for all images in the group. And RBD mirror mirrors this. And currently it's going to support a snapshot-based mirroring mode only. Probably in future someone will want to add journal mirroring. So yes, the goal is that you can either. So actually, interface is the same that what we currently have per image, but we will be able to have the same commands, but for the group of image. And you can create snapshot either via command line interface manually, or the scheduler, the SMG module will support this in the future. It's not implemented yet in IPR. When you just add some scheduler or snapshots, and they will be created automatically, and RBD mirror is mirroring them. Basically, it's it. If you want to know some details of this.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
This is great news. This just came up a couple days ago in a meeting, I think related to Rook and Kubernetes. I'm guessing that was what prompted Orit to sketch this out as well. So yes, a timely addition.
So it's doable for Quincy, I think, if I have time to work on this. Hopefully.
I guess, Orit, a question for you: Are the equivalent concepts already present on the Kubernetes side to do something like this?
There's a cap. I think the spec is alpha, which means it takes at least 2 Kubernetes versions to be finalized. But it's basically, there will be a volume group that you can take a snapshot. But mirroring is not Kubernetes. So they're talking about snapshots. for mirroring, it's for regular snapshot.
I guess presumably in that case it would build on the existing volume group function in the same way that we're already doing here.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Great.
All right, so somebody's added a discussion about Prometheus scale out. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, that was me. It was the same topic we just mentioned a little earlier, just trying to avoid funneling everything through the manager module and reporting everything directly.
Yeah.
So I imagine this may require some extra work on the RBD client side.
Okay. Well, so sorry. What if this isn't the mirroring thing then? So what are you actually looking for here?
But not the mirroring, but whatever metrics we're currently gathering and funneling through the Prometheus module, sending those directly from where they're being generated. I think for things like kernel RBD, this could be handled by the generic Prometheus module for scraping like metrics for block devices, like reads and writes, kind of IO stats. But for the RBD, I imagine we might want to integrate an exporter directly there.
Yeah, this has come up in the context of Kubernetes, but not which currently uses kernel RBD, at least for if you're using subCSI. There is an option to use NBD, but the default is kernel RBD. We obviously cannot just tie this to libRBD because libRBD needs to exist somewhere. But in the case of NBD, it can be tied, I assume, to the NBD to the RBD NBD instance, the instance of the daemon.
Yeah, like we need a target. We can't have monitoring scraping every client machine in the cluster directly.
Well, no, that's actually
I don't see networking being okay.
That's actually what we the node level, taking care of kernel RBD metrics via the node exporter, some kind of node exporter, whether it's the existing one that would just be pointed at the /dev/RBD block devices, or something that we would need to come up ourselves, whether on the SEP side or on the OCS side. That's irrelevant, but that needs to be done on the client side because the current metrics that are based on randomized sampling or Bloom filter based sampling of OSDs, that does not present the full picture. The latency that you get from it is not the latency that the client sees.
Sorry, I'm not saying the clients can't be involved. I'm saying that we can't be. I don't think we can be scraping directly from them. That's a network security problem. They need to send it somewhere on connections that they open.
Isn't that exactly what the Prometheus model is, where it's sending to the Prometheus server?
It seems like it depends on what you're
right, but we need a Prometheus endpoint. So, are we saying that we're going to have a generic SEP Prometheus endpoint?
No. So, in the case of, for example, taking the narrow case of our block PVs, which are currently kernel RBD in Kubernetes, what I imagine you would end up with is either an existing node exporter, which is already there and running on each node, also taking care of RBD block devices, or something that we write. So it won't be an existing exporter; it will be a new exporter, but it would still run on each client node that has block devices mapped and present the endpoint, and then the dashboard or whatever it is can query that endpoint, and so that all nicely fits into the existing Prometheus model and the existing Kubernetes model. what we're currently doing is, or I'm not sure if we're actually doing it, but what we could be doing with the existing bits is going to the manager and querying the stats that are being generated by the manager module, which the way it does it is it installs a query on each of the USDs to send periodic to send like batches, like snapshots of counters for objects based on prefixes, based on object prefixes for each image, and then those get collated in the manager module and presented. That's what the dashboard, when Ernesto talked about the performance tab and the Grafana thing that wasn't being displayed there. That's how it currently works. It uses that manager module and as a step towards resolving the manager scalability issues, we need to walk away from that as well. So one thing would be to not introduce new metrics for mirroring and do it on the side. And then as a second step, we would need to do this for, in the non-mirroring, just general case of here's an image, and I want to see it's, the RBD top functionality would sort of need to be switched away from the manager and into the.
Right.
I'm not sure if we can do it for RBD top in the short term, but we can definitely do it in the Kubernetes case, because RBD top is kind of, the user just executes that's a librd instance. It just goes and talks to the manager. So figuring out where the endpoint is kind of an issue because it doesn't need to. The RBD top command is not necessarily going to be run on the same node as where the image is mapped or where the RBD daemon is being stood up. Whereas in the Kubernetes case, specifically in the kernel RBD case, I imagine that can be fairly easily taken care of by the existing node exporter, which can look at the IO stat data, and it already does that for all kinds of block devices. And the benefit of the kernel block device that we get here is that it's already there, it's already integrated. We don't need to do anything special like we would for NVD. At least if we want to make it work for RBD top as well. Obviously, the existing node exporter can just as well look at the /dev/NVD devices and do it in the Kubernetes case. But again, looking at the overall picture, we would need to eventually we would need to come up with something in the NVD daemon for this.
Okay. Yeah, so like talking to node exporter makes sense. I just want to make sure that we're not saying we want to have random incoming connections querying librd about its state, because I don't want librd to turn into a server. And then once we do that, I'm also worried about the manager going out and directly talking to every server that has a RBD client of some kind on it. Like, there are users of tens of thousands of those. And if the manager is a scalability problem now, I don't see how that works. We're going to need intermediate processes whose job it is to do this metrics collection, right? Or not collection, but collation.
So it doesn't go to the manager. That's the whole idea. You don't send the stats to the manager. You send directly to Prometheus, which is designed to handle large-scale ingest of metrics from many different clients.
Right. So I'm saying we're going to have a separate Prometheus collection of daemons that run somewhere, right? That handle collation.
I think it depends. I think there are different types of deployments that have different security models and requirements. And I think in the situation that you're referring to, Greg, you might have like a centralized storage cluster with a bazillion clients spread across an organization. And in that case, you might not have Prometheus scraping like all the client machines like across an entire campus or something like that. But in the Kubernetes case, it certainly makes sense because you already have Prometheus endpoints on all the same nodes that are the clients, like it's sort of an enclosed cluster. But it seems to me like sort of the distinction is here is that Ceph isn't responsible for necessarily ensuring that all of the node exporters are defined or deployed on all the same nodes. Like if you have a model where it makes sense, then you're already going to have node exporters on all the right machines. So you're going to get all these KRBD bats already. And if you don't, then like you just wouldn't get the benefit. Or maybe we have a bimodal thing. I'm not really sure. If Ilya, are you suggesting that we would have both ways would work, or that these features would only be available if you have Prometheus scraping?
I think the first step would be to do the Prometheus scraping part for the Kubernetes case, basically, and handle that, because currently, that's obviously the easiest case, and also that would allow us to sort of offload that and then concentrate on solving the RBD top problem, which is like RBD top is sort of designed to go to the single manager instance and get the metrics for all the images in the cluster or the top 50 or whatever, right? That like the way it's currently architected is that it sort of needs that it needs that central point to go to because it does lie in terms of like latency because that's not the latency that the actual client sees, but it's still a useful thing for the administrator to go type a few characters and see what are the top 20 images on this cluster or in this pool that are maybe causing issues or overloading or release or whatever. And that use case, I imagine, would be based, would remain tied to the manager to some degree, unless, at least for the foreseeable future, because it really is like the whole point of it was that we have this central point that we can talk to, that we can query, and solving that is going to be, that's a much larger project. Perhaps as a first step, what we can do there is just drastically decrease the frequency with which the metrics are being sent to the manager and collated, so we can make it like even we can go to something as long as 2 or 5 minute intervals, because on a large scale, if the cluster is having issues, waiting for 5 minutes to see the latest snapshot of RBD top data is not going to be a problem. So maybe if the manager, if we don't come up with anything better, and the manager continues to be a problem, then as a kind of like shortish term solution, what we can do is once the Kubernetes and other client side consumers don't depend on the manager anymore for the administrator use case, we can just have it happen once every 5 minutes and or something like that.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a good short-term step. I think we can maybe think more in the future about how to do the RPD top piece. I think that's good for now.
All right. Somebody wanted to talk about exposing snapshots via RTW. Nobody wants to claim credit for that. Okay, well, there's a feature already where you can start, where you can clone an RVD image off of an RTW base image, or a base image that's stored in RTW, and we want to go the other way. I haven't looked a lot at the integration involved here, but I think it's probably just going to be like writing some RTW code that goes off and speaks RVD and exposes it as a bucket of some sort.
Yeah, I think it requires the zipper backend, essentially. Based on the discussion RTW used EAS yesterday, I'm not sure if it's in a stable enough position where it's feasible to do this frequency. But that'd be the way to implement it.
Sorry, I kind of lost you there after you said you're not sure it's stable enough for Quincy.
The RTW zipper framework.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll be a nice thing to do when we can.
Yep.
Okay. Someone asked if we should move RVD suite to CEP-ADM based, and it's almost done. There's a PR, apparently. And then the last thing on the list was image encryption, which I believe is from Danny and Orr, who are on the call.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm Orr. So we've been working for Pacific to add encryption to librvd. So Jason was our mentor. He was doing the code review, and we actually got it into Pacific. So what we have today in Pacific is LUKS-based, the LUKS format encryption for RVD images. So basically, the user needs to set a password. If he wants to use encryption, he sets a password for this image, and then whenever he opens the image, he needs to apply the encryption load function to have the actual load the encryption to the IO stack. So this is what we have for Pacific, but we still are missing a relatively small piece of code that we have a PR for, and this will make this encryption feature much more useful. It will make it a differentiator feature. So right now what we have is when you create a volume and you encrypt it, then all clones, so if you clone, do RVD clone on an encrypted image, it will have the same encryption on the child. And now we want to enable the user to have different passphrases for the child and for the parent. And this is something that we already have a PR, and actually Jason reviewed this, but it was his last day, and we didn't manage to complete this code review. So we're waiting to see who will take on the review for this PR. And I think this is what I had to say. Danny, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, maybe just a few words. I say there is value in this as is because we have better performance. I think we cut down on one copy. So just if you use QEMU encryption versus librvd encryption, you're gaining like 20% on performance. If you move to LUX2, which is not supported by QEMU, but that's the default today in DMCrypt. So just to get compatibility between images used with CSI, which are doing DMCrypt and LUX2, and you get an extra 10 or 20% on performance above the LUX1. So you get some benefits just by using the librd level encryption, but really to drive it through this clone feature. We see this as if you have a lot of stock images lying around and you want to clone them, but each one needs a new key. So the parent can be unencrypted, but the child has to be encrypted. So every bit of new data gets encrypted. So that's kind of the use case, and as all said, that the state is pretty advanced with this.
That sounds awesome. I'm backfilling for Jason, so I'll try and get to this PR soon. I see that it touches QA tasks, but doesn't add any to the suites anywhere. But maybe it's already there. That'll be my first question for you: is where it's tested. But yeah, this sounds like a really useful feature for client security.
I have one really quick question just to make sure I understand. Because this is using the existing LUX2 format, does that mean you can go back and forth between mapping the image unencrypted and then using DMCrypt on top of it, and then or mapping it with the encryption in librd, and it'll work both ways?
So it is compatible with DMCrypt, but if you, with this new feature of different keys per clone, it's not Lux compatible.
That part, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So other than that, it's going to be compatible, but we're working on adding some hacks, so at least DMCrypt will tell you, oh, I can't open this because it's been used differently. But other than that, if it's just flat images, then yeah, you can move back and forth.
That's super slick. Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Well, that was the last topic on our agenda, and I think we were scheduled to end in 2 minutes, but any other topics people wanted to discuss for RBD in the upcoming months?
I have the question for this last topic we have about this PR. Actually, I'm going to review it to some extent at least. But as far as I see, you had discussion with Jason. Did you address already? Because I don't see a repush.
So it's still not. There are still some points that Jason raised that we want to discuss, and this is what we said we wanted to discuss it in perhaps face to face.
Okay, I will look at it.
All right. If there's nothing else, it sounds like maybe we have a couple hours off until SethFest starts. Oh wait, no, SethFest starts right now, doesn't it? No, that's tomorrow. I can read times.
Yep, SethFest will start tomorrow, 24 hours.
That's all I got. Thanks, guys. Josh, any closing words or Sage?
No.
Nope.
Thanks, thanks everybody. Yeah. See you tomorrow. SethFest.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.